Hello, 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 and welcome to the Cheap Seats. It's the first international break, so I'm not going to call it the international break edition or the FPL edition. We're bringing everything into one now, and we're going live on Facebook and on Twitter and on YouTube right now. But you can catch us also afterwards when we post and we let the world know. But do send through your comments if you're watching live on One World Sports Radio, the Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube platforms. This week, it's an international break. I got the guys all back. Cyrus is back from his beloved book tour. And AB and Wahid are ready to vent. The week before the international break it normally happens with the end of the transfer window. So the first thing we want to talk about today is what happened over the weekend. Cyrus, your team won by a lot of goals.
Maybe don't start with me. Don't start with me because I'll have very little to say. I'll just say yes, my team did what they needed to do. Chelsea were just incredible, not necessarily in terms of an all-round performance, but in terms of finding those gears to go through. I think that what a lot of non-Chelsea fans might not have noticed was that first half against Crystal Palace had been how our season had gone last season. No real idea as to how we're going to pick apart a team and then struggle to get one goal and then potentially go behind. What has changed this season is Thiago Silva, man, he could be 1,000 years old and he'd still manage to marshal that defense. His awareness on the ball, his ability to actually just get everybody together. And I was just reading now, but Cesar Azpilicueta saying that him, Thiago, Mendy, and Zuma all spoke French to each other. There's something to be said about the power of communication. So the back line was completely shored up. You had an Kante who also is French speaking in front of them. And so it really just sort of brought them together. And then the rest of the guys could focus on what they needed to. So to win 4-0, yes, there were 2 penalties within that. But they were well-won penalties. As Man United fans will tell you, you get given the penalty these days, and it's checked. It's not just that the ref felt really bad for you on the day, though he didn't feel bad for you guys this past weekend. But, Chelsea managed to take the opportunities that presented themselves. And yes, we're still waiting for Werner to score his first league goal, but it's looking good. It's looking good. Frank is doing the business.
So, Cyrus, one more. Liverpool losing over the weekend by 7 goals. Or not by 7 goals, they conceded 7, but they lost by 5. How does that make you feel as a Chelsea fan? Are you a lot more confident? You know you lost to Liverpool. Does it feel like it's a missed opportunity, seeing how Aston Villa managed to pick them apart? Or is this just one of those once-offs?
I think it's more of a once-off kind of result because you're not going to beat Liverpool 7 in many games. I mean, I think the last time that happened was in the 60s, right? Now, one of the crazy things here is the understanding that there's a veneer that seems to have been lost from this team. I think that the Chelsea game was a fairly easy one for them, though barring that red card, everything was fairly even. So when you look at Christensen getting sent off just before half-time, had really changed the complexion of that game for Chelsea, and potentially they could have actually gotten a draw from that game, if not maybe stolen a couple of points. So, it's one of those where I think it used to happen with United in the past that as soon as one team won against them, others were sort of like, wait, hang on, we can actually beat these guys. Now, I think that Liverpool haven't necessarily lost that air of invincibility, but I think that what happens with them sometimes is, and with teams as good as they have been, is that you have a space where somebody like Villa says, what do we lose if we go for it? And every single mistake that Liverpool could make, they did, and they were punished for those. Ollie Watkins will never have a better game in his footballing career. This is it. This is the pinnacle for him. A perfect hat-trick against Liverpool. That's madness.
Okay. Wahid, in a weekend where Liverpool dropped points, City dropped points, Chelsea and Arsenal gained some points, how do you characterize Manchester United's game on Sunday in the midst of the things that are happening in this Premier League season?
Before I get to United, I want to talk a little bit about Chelsea because the previous week I watched Chelsea and I looked at Thiago Silva and I thought, this guy's caught the Chelsea defenders disease. Like, I don't know what happens, but they come from all over and they catch the same disease and they can't defend. and it seemed like that was a once-off, because this past weekend against Crystal Palace, he looked completely at home in the back line. He looked like the assured international defender he is. He seemed to bring the defense together. He seemed to be able to lead the defense, and I think that will be very important for Chelsea going forward, because we know that Chelsea's attackers can wreak havoc amongst any defense in the Premier League with the players they've acquired, and all they needed to do to take themselves up to that level of challenging Manchester City and Liverpool was to show up that defense. And it seems like with the addition of Thiago Silva, and in particular Ben Chilwell, who is everything that Marco Alonso is not, they really seem to have done.
Marcus Alonso wishes he was Ben Chilwell, even in his heyday. I mean, gosh, what a debut from Chilwell.
What a debut. And I think Dean and I mentioned on the one FPL talk that we expected him to maybe be the best Premier League signing of the season. And during his first appearance, I saw nothing to change my mind that this is a hell of a player.
There's a right back at Leicester who's going to be knocking on your door soon. Wahid.
Yeah, onto United, and I can't say I expected that. I was expecting a Mourinho type of performance from almost both sides. I was expecting it to be much tighter than it was. United started off by attacking Spurs, and then seemed like a deer caught in the headlights when things didn't go our way. Maguire looked like Bambi on ice, and like it was just awful. It was rotten from minute one to the end. There was infighting. The players seemed to be having a go at each other, and it was just not a happy performance from Man United. And I said that I wasn't expecting a result like that, but having looked at it, it could have happened the previous week. Brighton hit the bar, so this idea of conceding 6 could honestly have happened against Brighton. It wasn't a once-off. The defense was absolutely shocking. And to be honest, I don't know where to from here for Man United. I don't know if Alex Diaz is going to shore up that defense. He is an attacking fullback, he's a wing back. So I'm not sure that this is going to be shored up in any way in the next couple of weeks. Looking forward, we've got 6 fixtures or seven upcoming fixtures, and the only winnable fixture with our current form is the Newcastle one. And even then, I'm not sure that it's a winnable fixture next time
Wait,
out.
Isn't Arsenal part of those fixtures as well? Oh yeah, I thought that was for us.
It is. We've got 7 very losable fixtures coming up, and you wonder if at some point the board, as much as what's happened can be put at the feet of the door of the board, you wonder if at some point, if there's 7 losable fixtures, whether the gun is going to be pointed at Ole's head at some point.
So from my perspective, and I'm going to bring AB into this, my perspective is that the gun's already is already pointed at Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. It's been pointed at every single Manchester United manager from the moment Sir Alex Ferguson left.
Mm-hmm.
He's just a run of bad fixtures away from being fired, largely because the people who are hiring him are the ones making the blunders, and it's very easy to fire somebody if the results on the field aren't working. The fact that I watched a Mourinho side that arrived at Old Trafford and did not park the bus is something that says to me that the fear of playing Manchester United at Old Trafford, even with the array of stars that you have offensively, it just bothered me a lot, because I was like, dude, when you scored first, I sat there going, okay, but Mourinho was here to park the bus. It didn't work out.
That's exactly it. The fact that United still scored within 30 seconds and Spurs didn't shut up shop says a heck of a lot about where Mourinho set up his team.
AB, so in that, what do you think? So Wahid spoke about the defense. He touched on the higher ups. What happened? I mean, when you watched the game, what were you thinking?
Well, I mean, the first minutes, definitely we deserved a penalty. Martial was fouled. Bruno converted it well. And then...
Yes, FPL points.
Yeah, and I was happy. And then I should have switched the TV off or just thrown the TV away. I just believe United lack some control. We lack that leadership. We lack that discipline. We also lack an identity as to who we are as a defensive unit. Um, we've thrown money at the problem of defense. You know, we've signed guys like, let's go chronologically. Most recent, we've signed, Harry Maguire, we've got Lindelof, we've got Bailly, and none of them have really made that impact that we've needed them to. Yes, we've conceded less goals last season than the previous season, but the previous season before last season, so 2 seasons ago, was an absolute shocker. The season before, where I think we had Lindelof and Bailly as our starting centre back pairing, where Mourinho had the most success he's had, at United, was an excellent defensive season where we knew, okay, cool, we're going to be playing boring football, we'll bore teams out, but we'll be defensively solid. Now, maybe Ollie isn't the right defensive coach. Maybe he's, not that guy for us. But at the same time, his hands are, in my opinion, tied based on this season's transfers. What went wrong is you've got Luke Shaw doing his thing. Luke Shaw is kind of like a cat. He just, you can't really control him. He just goes wherever. He's more like a leopard, actually. If there's a wall over there, he'll climb over that wall. He's not supposed to, but he'll climb over it.
And then he doesn't have the athletic ability to climb over that wall, please.
Okay, fair. Maybe he's like a fat Garfield then. Which is a Garfield.
Wow. Okay.
Melt lasagna somewhere.
You don't think like, that's a bit much?
No. 30 million pounds or 27 million pounds we paid for him is a bit much.
And allow him.
Well, I mean, anyone and their mother knew that Harry Kane and Heung-min Son are going to come at you. They're going to press. If you, as United defender, don't know the team who you're playing against, it could be Bafana, it could be Germany, it could be Liverpool. They're going to press you because they know you are terrible on the ball. You cannot play the ball at the back, but we persist with this.
So here's, I
don't know.
Here I have this question. So there was that goal where they tried to play out the back. Is that an Ole problem or is that
that's an Ole
problem?
That is an Ole problem.
Yeah. Okay,
that's an Ole problem.
So then the other goals, in terms of the structure, is that
which one?
Harry
so
Maguire, Luke Shaw problem, or where do you put the problem of the other goals? Because the one where they try to play out the back, that's Ole and Solskjaer's problem. But is it Maguire needs to be a lot more assertive? Do we need to go back to Brandon Williams instead of Alex Telles?
Let me come in here.
Please, sir.
Let me come in
because
here.
Brandon Williams listens, at least, and the question was, what was Luke Shaw doing in the middle of the box in the first place, the ball going down the left?
He listens because he's a child and he's used to listening to his teachers.
I don't think that's it. I don't think that's it. So look at it this way, right? And I think this is one of the things that we saw at Chelsea a lot last season. When you don't have somebody taking control of the defense, you then have everybody trying to take control of the situation. Now, this is one of the key issues around what Maguire's been up to. How many times has he pushed his own player out the way to try and make an effort to get the ball out, right? That says to me there's a lack of trust in the person that they're playing with. Now, the fact that he's trying to get past his own guy to make a clearance says he doesn't deem whatever this guy's going to do as being worthwhile. And now that says to you as an attacking team that you can attack Luke Shaw because Mourinho was the one who had a go at him and then dropped him, put him back in and dropped him and put him back in. Then there were other players who were being given a chance. So it comes down to the defensive structure here. And if you as a manager can't see that that's what's happening at the back, then you've got a problem. So that's why I say there's an Ole problem. Now, when you try to play out from the back, you got to have the right kinds of players to do that. Who was the one that gave the ball away in that instance? It wasn't Maguire though, right? It was Bailly. Now, the pass itself was absolutely terrible. But in essence, you shouldn't be trying to pass across your back line towards a midfielder. That's a rookie mistake. So, yes, it's an Ole issue in terms of he wants them to play out of the back so they're not just giving the ball away. But then you have to have the right personnel in order to do that. That was one of the Chelsea things, that they played ball-playing centre-backs all the time, not necessarily great defensive players. So when you're in a position like United are, where Maguire's not bad with the ball at his feet, but he's not great. Bailly's been in and out of the team, so he's not necessarily playing the situations well. And this is what cost United in that game, where Mourinho just said, run at them. You can absolutely eat meals all time of the day. It's a drive-through there. Have at it. And it came to pass. But that was it.
My thing
So
with
speaking about
my thing with Ole is that I don't think the defensive setup is very clever. I watched a show with Gary Neville a while back that said when you're playing with a back four, the back four have to believe that there is a rope tied to tied to their waist, and when one goes, everybody needs to shift with them, and when another one goes, the whole back four needs to shift the other way, and they have to believe
down the road.
they have to believe that there is a rope tied to their waist, and they have to defend together as a back four. The big problem, and Cyrus has just brought that up, is that United defend individually. Wan-Bissaka is really good at defending by himself. That doesn't mean he's necessarily very good at defending with the right centre back. Maguire is a good defender by himself, but he's not very good at defending with Luke Shaw, who's his left back. And very often our two centre backs are at 6s and 7s with each other. So while they're all individually good players, they're not forming a cohesive backline at the moment, and that's the biggest problem. And what it needs is good coaching. So yes, I'm a very big Ole fan. I think he's put in the structural or the cultural reboot that this club needed. But I think as a coach, he is very attacking minded and hasn't been able to fine tune his thinking to the defensive side of the game. And that blame lies at his door.
Mm-hmm. Okay, just let's move on before we make the show all about Manchester United, even though I know you guys would love to do that. The transfer window closed on Monday night. There was some
So it's still Man United.
Oh, wait, I've got something to talk about. I know about y'all.
Yeah, Paul's having a party.
Last-minute transfer where all of a sudden Uncle Stan in the US decided to put down the money for Thomas Partey. I'm not a fan of. I love Thomas Partey. I don't think it was a great signing for Arsenal, but it leads me to talk about which teams did well in the transfer window. I look at the spending that teams have done. Chelsea 226 million on that triumvirate of players, including a goalkeeper. You've got Manchester City, 147 million. We're yet to see where that has gone. We're still waiting to see some returns there. Aston Villa are third with Leeds on 85 million pounds spent on. And you saw, I think for me on Sunday, Aston Villa put out a spread of their new signings and said to everyone, watch out, we're not getting relegated. Leeds, with the spending that they have, finishing it off with a wide player called Rafinha from Rennes. I thought they were incredible. Did you guys, any clubs that have done well? And then we'll go to the clubs that didn't do well. But which clubs that you saw, Cyrus, did well over the window that's not Chelsea? Because we've seen what Chelsea's laid out. There we go.
Without question. And I think, in essence, there's been a lot of emphasis put on Chelsea spending because of the money, the outlay itself, the players who were brought in. But Everton have had, not just sneakily, they've had the best window by far.
They've spent 65 million.
Not a heck of a lot comparative to some of the other clubs, but what they've done is they've bought quality. They've looked at the spaces that they needed to get people in, and they also realize, and this is where Ancelotti is a great manager, you back him, you give him the players that he needs, and he'll produce. I've been a big fan of Dominic Calvert-Lewin for a long time, way before this season's FPL madness. And what I saw in him was a striker who had all of the ingredients needed to be a success. He was quick, good in the air, able to link up play, hold up the ball, do everything that he's currently doing well. Then what you saw was you had the Richarlison, who was a completely great player for them to sign, and then they just started building pieces around that. The most important, actually, is Alan, as we spoke about earlier on before the season started. But in a combination with Andre Gomez, he's one of the best new signings that Everton have had. Their biggest problem, and everybody knows it, is Jordan Pickford. That he is a shocking goalkeeper right now. He was a good shot stopper at one point, and they tried to get somebody in, Romero, I believe, from United. They failed in their attempts to get a loan move in, but they know that they're going to have to ride out the storm with Pickford, and hopefully he can actually do a little bit.
They have an opportunity with the English domestic window not necessarily closing for the Premier League and the lower league clubs in getting David Raya from Brentford. He comes at £15 million, That's the price they want for him. But I think he's an adequate goalkeeper for Everton to give competition to
Pickford.
to Pickford. But they can't find a goalkeeper of like what Arsenal did. Arsenal went to go find an Icelandic model somewhere who's got big hands and is tall.
Yeah.
Who I don't think will play any competitive game outside. I don't even think he's going to play the Carabao Cup because everyone seems to be playing their strongest 11. But any signing, any clubs that did well for you this window?
Yeah, so we all look at Everton because I think they've basically gone and backed their manager. But I'm not going to speak about them because Cyrus spoke about them very eloquently. So I think that we look at a club like Aston Villa, who have done very, very good business, and Spurs, two clubs to me who did very, very good business. So Aston Villa, I think that what we've seen is that they've survived. And then they've gone and put together a club that can not only survive this year, but maybe push on a bit as well, and maybe target a much higher position. They've gone and signed Ollie Watkins, who's a natural, proven, pure, thoroughbred goal scorer. They've gone and signed Ross Barkley to add a little bit of creativity to their midfield, but not just creativity, to give themselves options now. Because in signing Ross Barkley, they now have the option of playing Jack Grealish in the middle or out wide. They have lots of options around it, and what they've done is they've designed a side to feed Ollie Watkins and give him the best chance of recapturing that form that saw him score 26 goals for Brentford last season. And then
there's also another signing before you carry on that
Bertrand Traore.
Yeah, exactly.
Bertrand Traore.
Bertrand Traore on the left-hand side is going to make that front three with Grealish and Ollie Watkins something else. And also Emiliano Martinez in goals. That was, I think, a steal for them.
Huge signing, yeah. And then I look at Spurs, who've again, back to Mourinho. They've looked at holes in their squad and they filled them. They filled them adequately. They've got Gareth Bale in to add some stardust to the side. They've got Reguilon to provide competition at left back, which Danny Rose couldn't do. They've gone and gotten the backup that they so desperately needed. Højbjerg, I was getting to that. They've gone and added the backup to Harry Kane, which they desperately needed, and they got Højbjerg, who to me was the best player on the field on Saturday. You know, I find it very interesting that one team scored 6 and one team scored 1, and all the narrative has been around the team who scored 1 instead of talking about all the good things that the team that scored 6 did on the field. And that's the nature of the English media, because Man United are the gargantuan club, so it's very, very it sells papers to write about the demise of Man United. We need to look at how good Tottenham were in what they did, and Højbjerg was the catalyst for almost everything they did. Everything good they did went through him. Højbjerg is a very interesting player because when he started out, he wasn't this pure defensive midfielder he was. He played as a number 10, he played as a box-to-box midfielder, and only now has he developed into this holding midfielder who can sit and shield the back four. But very astute signing, plugs a hole in their squad, and allows others to prosper around him very well. So yeah, Spurs and Villa for me.
AB, any other teams that weren't mentioned by Wahid and Cyrus that you loved their transfer work?
I just thought Liverpool did so well in signing guys like Thiago and Diogo Jota, and letting go some of the players who they did for the amount of money that they did. Like Ryan Brewster was what, 27 million pounds let go, and if things work out well for him and Liverpool decide to get him back as a long-term replacement for Firmino, that's a 35 mil buyback clause. Financially speaking, Liverpool did excellently this window. I think Man City signed the players who they needed to. They signed, some big-name centre-backs. Will it work out for them? We'll find out shortly. But you never know with how City do things on the field. But, you always expect City to come out stronger, especially when they lose the title. But I'm really impressed with Liverpool. Yes, they had a blip, and I think the spotlight's been taken away from them this weekend. But we can't discount the signings that they've made.
Yeah, I think for me, I look at this Arsenal squad and what they've done and the work did throughout the transfer window. I love the signing of Gabriel. There were a lot of question marks, but whenever he's on the field, everything seems to be calm. it's like I'm watching a still
Because
life.
he's not David Luiz.
The problem is they play him with David Luiz. But anyway, they speak Portuguese in that backline. I'm happy about it. I'm okay with it. I love I wanted Ceballos permanently, but alone we've worked. The Thomas Partey signing was an acknowledgement that to Mikel Arteta that they want to take him long term, which I was happy about. I think he will struggle with the pace of the league for a couple of games, but I think he'll get in. I just don't know if you play Partey and Sabas together or you try and play a Xhaka with Partey and Sabas with Elneny, but they'll figure it out. But I thought they did quite well. Leeds for me were the best. I love how when owner, CEO, director of football, and coach align, it just works. They got a backup to Bamford in Rodrigo. They managed to hold on to Calvin Phillips. They also managed to go and sort out a couple of the areas where they needed to strengthen. They strengthened out wide in terms of getting in Rafinha as well, who is quality from France, and they're trying to set themselves up to stay in the Premier League. So now, the next one thing I want to talk about is who has impressed you the most this season. This is the point where Wahid, you can talk about Tottenham. You can talk about the team that's on top of the log, that's Everton. And also, do you think that this run of form so far this month can carry the teams that have impressed you? And what's the final end destination for most of them? AB, what do you think? Who's impressed you so far this month?
So I'm going to touch on. Okay, let me just pick one player just to make it fair to the other guys, and I'm going to go with someone like James Rodriguez. So I signed James for fantasy football reasons purely because he was on the cheap. I liked what Carlo was doing with Everton, and it just worked out for me. I think James, there were a lot of doubts when he signed purely because at Madrid he struggled with fitness. The La Liga is a lot easier. But he's actually just found his groove somehow. And I think we're all now curious about, can Gareth Bale replicate what James is doing? It also helps that James is given a more free role with Alan and Decore sitting in that midfield. And James is the perfect man to unleash the guys like Richarlison and DCL, who I'm sure will be mentioned just now. So for me, James has surprised me, and I think he's someone to keep an eye on for FPL.
And which team has surprised you, and which team has disappointed you so far, outside of Manchester United?
Okay, outside of Manchester United, jeepers. Okay, well,
we know they've disappointed you. We know they're not doing anything.
So the team that has surprised me, funny enough, has been Spurs. I've always said that Spurs are the most average team in the world, and they got a documentary just because Mourinho was their coach. But tactically, Mourinho has come out and I don't know, maybe he's learned from his previous coaching jobs. Maybe he's changing the way he manages and the way he plays football. And unfortunately, I enjoyed the way Spurs played against United. It was horrible to watch, but that was just one of those things. So if Spurs continue the way they do and they keep the guys, like Son and Kane fit, they're going to be real top four contenders this season. Team that has disappointed me has actually been Sheffield United. They started off last season so well. They had this camaraderie. They were a very difficult team to go and play against, no matter where it was. Maybe it was the home support. I don't know. But this season, they've just been absolutely shocking. I mean, I think even United could beat them. That's how bad they are.
Wow. Okay, Wahid, which teams have impressed you and disappointed you so far in this month?
So Spurs, as I mentioned earlier, so they're just playing a really good brand of football. I wouldn't say that Mourinho has changed in any way. I think that he was a coach who wasn't given the correct tools to succeed at Man United, and when Mourinho is given the right tools to succeed, he always will. He is a world-class coach, and so yeah.
So here's the thing. I think it's the first team where Mourinho can actually attack with 3 players. He doesn't need anybody else to join the attack. Normally
Yeah.
he would attack with 4 and sit with 6 defensive players. Now he can actually defend with 7, which is what happened on Saturday, and he just allows the 3 to have fun.
Yeah. When, as I said, you give Jose Mourinho the tools to succeed, and he will. He showed it before. He showed it at Porto. He showed it at Chelsea, at Inter, at Real Madrid. He is a world class coach, and he had his hands tied at Man United. I said that the day he was fired. I said even the great Jose Mourinho couldn't fix Man United. Man United's a broken club from top to bottom, and it's going to need. Long-term change to change that. So I'm not going to talk about Man United, but Spurs have.
Hold up. Does that mean that Spurs are getting a trophy this year?
I think so. I think so.
Okay.
I think so. I've said that I back Spurs to win a trophy this season. I think Mourinho will target the Europa League. It will give him European success. It will give him Champions League. It will solve the trophy drought. There's just so much value in Mourinho targeting that Europa League that I think they will win a trophy this year. So Spurs have impressed me a lot. Sonaldo has been as good as he's always been. Harry Kane has added a new dimension to his game in terms of the assists. He's now playing not just as a clinical goal scorer, but also with his back to goal, insofar as that he's able to grab the assists. He's changed a little bit. He's learned from Mourinho. He's becoming that typical Mourinho striker you associate with all the teams Mourinho manages. The hard-working striker who doesn't just score but also assists. So Harry Kane has been even more impressive than his previous seasons. So yeah, for me, it's been about Spurs. It's been about that spine that they've created at Spurs, and Mourinho has just done super well. Team that's disappointed me, well, I wouldn't say disappointed me, but has been disappointing, because them being disappointing makes me quite happy, and that's been City. They haven't been that good. They haven't been that good. They haven't been good at all, and their signings just don't impress me. Their signings, especially the defensive signings, I don't think are signings that you'd associate with a club trying to challenge for the Champions League. Maybe only Ferran Torres is an up and coming player who adds a bit of creativity and spark. But the defensive signings, Nathan Ake isn't a player who you'd associate with challenging for title and Champions League. Ruben Diaz, signed for £62 million, was their third choice down their list. They missed out on Koulibaly. They missed out on, the name slips me, this Sevilla centre-back.
Kunde.
Yeah. They missed out on 2 players, and to all intents and purposes had to settle for Ruben Diaz at £62.5 million. So they haven't been impressive so far. They got battered by Leicester. They should have lost to Leeds, and they haven't been impressive at all so far.
Cyrus, I'm not hearing Everton here. Is Everton on your list?
You know it. I'm a closet toffee. I think that for me, they are one of the big underdog stories in the Premier League, because they are the second team on Merseyside, and they haven't had any sense of success in gosh knows how long. So to have a manager like Carlo Ancelotti at the helm, to have the kind of talent that they've now been able to pull into the club, and also get rid of some dead wood like Theo Walcott, who hasn't necessarily done anything at Everton since his arrival, means that they're a club that are really chasing something that is bigger than just being in the league. And I think that's what Everton had been in the past. So the ownership have understood that they need to become not just the second team in Liverpool, but actually one of the big boys in the league. So Everton have really been really great. And I love... One of the other things that often goes unmentioned with Everton is how good their youth system has been. They managed to bring at least a player up from their youth ranks to play within that first team and do fairly well. You've had Davies in the past. Holgate is another one of those. Now you've got Dominic Calvert-Lewin. So you look at how they've also managed to use their youth setup to bring players through. And that's the kind of thing where when players like a Ryan Brewster are leaving Liverpool, they're not necessarily, they could almost look at Everton and say, well, I could just go across the road. Yes, there'll be problems, obviously, but it's a club that youth players could also think, I might get a chance if I've got the skill. Even Moise Kean, he's a young player. He's somebody that Ancelotti would say, let me give you the opportunity to go for it. Now, Richarlison also falls into that young player bracket. So you look at how they're playing, the kind of football that they're going for, and it's fearless. They're saying, guys, nobody expects us to do anything. Let's use that against them. And Ancelotti is the kind of manager who is so shrewd. He managed to get a lot out of some relatively. Yerry Mina is not a good defender, but he manages to get a lot out of those guys. In terms of teams that have disappointed me, the fact that nobody's mentioned Wolves says a lot about how well they had done, but the expectation being they'd overperformed. And Wolves have really not been anywhere close to what they were before, but they've played so much football over the last year and a half that it's going to take a toll. And fine, maybe that's why their manager keeps signing Portuguese players, because he's like, look, you'll just fit into the system, you understand how it works. So it's easier for them to sort of say, okay, let's see what we can do with the guys that we're bringing in. I think Wolves have been one of those who, much like Sheffield United, had shocked people, managed to get people to watch, and then they'd managed to hold on to a lot of their key players for so long that when somebody like Diego Jota leaves, you're like, okay, hang on a second. When did this become a thing? When did we become a selling club? And that will always be the trajectory for, unfortunately, the smaller teams. But you've got to be able to churn that over and then still get the results. I think Jimenez is a good player. He'll start to score goals again. But if he's not scoring, that's what's going to be their problem. I know that Wahid loves Podence because he keeps talking about him. But we haven't seen much from him yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think from my end, the team that has impressed me a lot is Aston Villa. 3 out of 3 against your relegation rivals. You're a third of the way there with your 9 points. That says, okay, that starts you out. You already won the first month, and you've got, 8 more to go. But that really helps them, and they've done well. They're sitting second on the log, and that's pretty impressive for me, because even if Aston Villa last year had a up and down season, the other team that's impressed me, but largely because David Moyes no longer was in
He's not in the dugout.
West Ham without David Moyes, they need to find a way to quarantine him for a very long time. Yes, but the team that disappointed me
could quarantine him by firing him.
The backroom staff follows suit. That's the problem.
But the team that surprised me, that's disappointed me this season, is it's Burnley. I think Burnley have always been that side that managed to just make it in. They don't spend much, but you do try and spend.
Spend anything.
Yes, do something.
Hey, they did the same as Real Madrid. So how are you gonna hold that against Burnley?
No, but now all of it, because they've always, even though they've spent less and they like looking for players below in the championship or guys who are coming through, they just haven't been able to put the results on the table. Dale Stevens, who is their only signing, who was free, doesn't look at all like Jeff Hendrick. They let Jeff Hendrick go, and now all of a sudden Burnley, who were great at defending, don't look good. Yes, they've had injuries, and Tarkowski's been out, but I look like it feels like Burnley's the team that's going to go down.
But probably. But Paul, isn't that also because towards the end of last season, there were question marks about their manager, and there's massive drama in the back room. And I think that the boardroom struggles are what's causing the on-pitch issues.
And it feels like Bournemouth to me. This feels like how Bournemouth season just kind of all of a sudden they had early run of games that weren't great, and then it just carried on, and then COVID happened, and then they came back and they were still poor. So, guys, we've had a lot of new signings. There's a question around that later on. Of the signings that happened in deadline day, I know Manchester United got Alex Telles and Edison Cavani. As we move on to our FPL discussion, which new signings that were signed in the past week that you think could make it into make an impact in the league that could go through? Cyrus?
I'm putting my hand up because I want to say it first. Ross Barkley. I knew that he'd be a very good addition for Villa because he's a fantastic player. He just wasn't able to break into the Chelsea team and do stuff consistently. He's also very much in the mold of those players who needs to be a big fish in a small pond. And putting him with Grealish, I mean, okay, maybe they might hit the town as hard as they hit the football pitch, but I do think that Ross Barkley will be one of those where if you're going to look for somebody who's relatively cheap, will play a lot of games, and will have an impact on those games, it'll be Ross Barkley.
Wahid?
Cyrus has kind of taken.
That's why I went first.
So Edison Cavani, no, even though Martial's injured.
So from an FPL point of view, no, I wouldn't touch Edinson Cavani to start with. He has to be in quarantine for the first game, so he'll miss Newcastle and make his debut against PSG. Which just goes to show you what a panic buy that was, because he could have been signed 6 weeks ago. But we're not going to speak about the backroom troubles at Man United. So yeah, from an FPL perspective, I don't think I'm going to be changing my side too much based on deadline day signings. I mean, you're not going to exactly be putting Man United's new Uruguayan kid into your FPL side. But yeah, so. I am looking at reintegrating Son, because I took him out with Mourinho playing a MasterCard in deceit. So I actually went for a left field pick to replace Son, and I chose Kai Havertz, who doesn't have a high ownership at the moment, but he has been grabbing the odd assist. Yeah, he has been grabbing an assist here and there, and I just thought that he might be one who's under the radar at the moment, doesn't have a high percentage of ownership, and is grabbing an assist here and there and everywhere at the moment. So he's just quietly going about his business when he's not spraying 40-yard passes across the field, going backwards and hitting the linesman. So when he's not dropping a disaster class in passing, he is grabbing an assist here or there. So that was the one I picked. So I had a big problem, and is insofar as I left Ollie Watkins on my bench after banging on the Ollie Watkins drum for about 3 weeks now. I left him on the bench and left 17 points there. So what I might do is just start bringing him into my starting 11 a little bit more.
So Wahid and I had the same idea. I brought Kai Havertz in because Son was injured. And then all of a sudden, Jorginho was the most exciting player on the field. AB, do you have Jorginho on your side, and who are you looking to integrate into your FPL?
No. So I don't have Jorginho in my team. But honestly, I think he may as well go in there because this whole penalty thing. But yeah, it wasn't even the handball penalty. It's suddenly weird how we went with handball penalties everywhere to none, like literally none. But anyway.
What did I say in the last show? I said that there was going to be an overcorrection on these things.
Yes, there was. But I don't even think there was a ball that hit a hand in the box.
Yeah, probably that.
Because everybody wasn't working around like this,
I mean, Harry Maguire was doing this the whole time. But,
Well, and then tackling people.
Yeah.
So, AB, who's the guy that you're looking to integrate into your squad after the international break?
So after the international break, so Cavani, in my opinion, I think he should get a lot of game time because Anthony Martial has been terrible. He hasn't, been anywhere. So I think Martial deserves to be dropped. But then again, that whole United team deserves to be dropped. But anyway, but someone who I think will be interesting to see how it goes is Gareth Bale. So he's been training with Spurs, and he offers Spurs something completely different. And the way Spurs are playing, now's the best time to put someone in who you're not too sure how they're going to perform, because that whole Spurs team is so G'd up. He'll just feed off that confidence. Unlucky for guys like Lucas Moura or Bergwijn, the guys who come out for him. But I'd be considering Gareth Bale as a shot.
Okay. Our last question on FPL, then I'll give you Wahid and AB 5 minutes to have another vent at Manchester United to close up. So, what's the one player that you've seen this season that you say that this guy is going to be here for the full 12 months? And Wahid, I'm going to go with different positions for the three of you. Wahid, in defense, who's that guy for you?
So no one. I'm not going to have any long-term signings in my defense. the Premier League has decided as a whole. I don't know if there was like a meeting between all 20 clubs that where just people have decided not to defend. So I don't think I don't think I'm going to have a consistent back four or defense in general. I think I'll chop and change mine a lot. If I was to look at my current team and think of the one player who would be a long-term acquisition in that team, would be Luke Ayling of Leeds. He's been very, very good so far, even though Leeds defense as a whole has shipped a few goals. I think we talked in the first FPL talk about Stuart Dallas, and I was the one who went to the other side of the defense and picked Luke Ayling. And I think that Luke Ayling's probably been the most impressive one in the defense so far. At 4.5 million, I'm probably thinking long term on him. But I'm just not sure about my defense at the moment. I've picked players and second guessed it, and I think I'm going to start moving towards AB's idea of not picking a defender who costs more than 4.5 because it's just not worth it. It's just not worth picking a defender who costs more than that when everybody is shipping goals.
Mm-hmm. Cyrus, in the midfield, which player do you think is your long-term guy?
What a question, because I always go with who have been the consistent ones that have scored points in previous seasons. Midfield is one of those where when you start chopping and changing, especially if you like, I tend to captain a midfielder. For me, that's where you'll get the most bang for your buck, and often more consistently. But Kevin De Bruyne has had an absolute shocking start to the season, and he'd generally be the guy who I'd be like, yeah, cemented, he's in the team, nobody move, and then we work around him. I'd potentially still say that, though I think that it would probably be Mo Salah, because he's critical to what happens. If anything good happens with Liverpool, it has to happen with Salah. So I think he's the one guy. I just don't have him in my team because it was either him or De Bruyne. And then I was like, I'll go with De Bruyne. They're playing Leeds. They just came up. Duh. So, one of those things.
AB, is a DCL up front, or is there somebody else that you think people should be looking out for to keep in the team all season?
So, I mean, if you want a Rolls Royce of a striker, go with Harry Kane. He's going to get you 20 goals this season, probably 20 assists the way he's going as well, which will be incredible. But for me, DCL he started off at 7 mil and now he's at 7.3.
7.6.
7.6, oh, sorry.
Yeah. He's gone up insanely.
So he started off at 7.5, yeah, or whatever.
He started at 7. It's a huge increase. It's the biggest increase over 3 weeks FPL has ever seen.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So yeah, there you go. That's him. But it's just the way Carlo has set up his team. Everything goes to DCL. If Everton are going to be successful, which right now they are, then DCL's your man, and you can then spend money on the Salahs, the Aubameyangs, who has been quiet, but yeah. So yeah, got to be DCL for me.
Okay, that ends our FPL discussion. AB and Wahid, you have 1 minute. 1 minute to tell me what went wrong in the transfer window. AB,
everything.
Yeah. So Ollie submitted a list. We didn't get the list. Ed Woodward decided, you know what, Ollie, I've got this, like I have, with the last 4 bloody managers. And for some reason, the manager wasn't backed, in my opinion, this transfer window. He was back the last one. Lack of planning. You can't sign a 33-year-old free agent on the deadline day when you could have signed him in June. So yeah, that's me.
Wahid,
pathetic right now.
Do you have a little bit more anger than him?
They're beaten and poor.
I must say. So Cavani screams to me panic signing because he's a free agent, and if he was part of your planning, you would have signed him in June when the transfer window opened. To sign a free agent who's 30,
it's not
yeah,
like
Ibrahimovic signed on the first day of the transfer window. He came in for preseason. He was part of Mourinho's plan. He was the striker Mourinho wanted. He was the Mourinho striker. Cavani isn't that. He's not. He was the plan F, because they went through plan B. Plan A was Sancho. Plan B was Dembele. Plan C was Ismail Assar. They went through the plan and they could not. And eventually, I read a tweet from one of the journalists who's very close to what happens at Man United, and he said that it seemed to be chaotic at Man United. Nobody had a clue what was going on in those last 5 days of the transfer window. I read another one that said that Man United tried to play poker with Borussia Dortmund. They were trying to play poker with a club who wasn't even sitting at the table. It just seems like Man United have a bunch of idiots running the club. They have no idea what's going on. There's no sporting structure. There's no direction. There's no ambition. And that spilled over into this transfer window. The manager wanted reinforcements. I just think that what happened was we had a good run of form. We had a really, really good run of form post-COVID. We finished third. There was a real feel-good factor about the club. There was a real feel-good. Yeah, with the hashtag. There was a feel-good factor around the club, and it's just so amazing how quickly that feel-good factor, how quick that momentum, how quick that positivity can be thrown out the window by absolute incompetence by a CEO like Ed Woodward. I read something that said that Ed Woodward tried to get the Glazers to back down in their stance regarding Jadon Sancho, so that it might not all be his fault. But at the end of the day, I think that Ole's head is going to be on the block at some point for something that isn't entirely his fault. And that's going to be very sad to see a club legend have to leave the club after not being backed. How you back a manager is what Everton have done to Carlo Ancelotti. And after finishing third, Ole should have been backed. So, he should have been backed, and he hasn't been.
Can I please come in here? Yes. I think what I need to say in rebuttal to that is, when they have backed him, they somehow ended up with Daniel James. And so remember that you have to also look at it in terms of, when we gave you the cash, you said this is what you wanted. And it's a bit like if you give a kid a chance to buy any toys in the store and they come back with a cheap toy, and you're like, okay, is that really what you want? We're like, yeah, that's what I want. Then the next season they say, now I want a PS5. What are you going to do with it? And so I think that in essence, but United have had that problem. So Ole personally, and
on Harry Maguire, let's just get that out.
Wan-Bissaka. So Harry Maguire is actually not even the major issue here. In essence, Harry Maguire should, in essence, be United's Van Dijk. You know, he's a big guy. He actually is very, very good in the air. He has marshaled the defense before and done that with a team that had inferior resources.
Of liquid.
Exactly. You know, but the thing here is, you then look at it and say, okay, fine. If you're not going to spend 100 and whatever million on Jadon Sancho, surely somebody like a Ben Rama would have actually appeased United fans.
At
right?
15 million.
Exactly. So the fact, there's something weird about this Ben Rama thing that nobody's taken a punt, and I wonder if he smells of the adulterapt. But but I think that there are bargains to be had that her quality. They could have gone for Adama Traore, and people would have been like, oh, okay, it makes sense, considering that Cavani's not a winger, and everybody else, Sancho, Dembele, those were the wingers. Now you suddenly have the striker. And I'm going to say one last thing, because I'm obviously talking way too much. I think that United's panic buying started with Odia Negalo, and that people tended to feel that it was a good move because they needed striking options at the time. But the reality was, he wasn't what they actually needed. He had Premier League experience, and so weighed in with a few relatively good performances. But this rot has started from way before. It's just the chickens have come home to roost right now.
Okay, guys, thank you very much for joining. A lot of anger, apathy there in the corner there. Hashtag Glazer Art, hashtag Woodward Art. But thank you very much for joining. To you, the viewers, please do like, follow, and subscribe to One World Sports Radio's YouTube channel, and follow us all on the social media channels. Till next week, it's International Week, so there's no games. Enjoy Germany versus whoever it is. But enjoy that, and we'll be back next week getting ready for a preview, probably, of the Merseyside derby happening the following Saturday. From myself and the rest of the team of the Cheap Seats, le sale cacajizo.